Join us for a webinar on the impact of COVID-19, navigating current and future mental challenges. Panelists Mugenyi, mental health professional, educator and author; Nicole Waldron, mental fitness coach and podcast host; and Joshua Houeto, motivator and singer-songwriter. Moderator Nikki Clarke, author and host of The Nikki Clarke Show. Visit transformationinstitute.ca.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for the second edition of the Community Resilience Webinar Series, organized by the Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation. I am Patricia Baby of Mawa. The first part of this program was on the topic Thriving in Turbulent Times, how to build a culture of resilience. And today we're discussing the impact of COVID-19, navigating current and future mental challenges. And we have an amazing panel waiting to tackle this topic. Now, my job here today is to introduce the moderator for tonight's event. She is the founder, producer, and host of the multi-award-winning show, The Nikki Clarke Show, which is currently broadcast on Afro Global Television across Canada. She's a former president of the Ontario Black History Society and a 25-year veteran in community activism. She's currently pursuing her master's degree at the Australian Institute of Business and is actually writing her fourth book, which is about 9 virtues that COVID-19 has taught me. Now, she is an ordained pastor as well as a proud mother of 3 grown children. She's very passionate about health and wellness, and she may not remember this, but I met her when she was promoting one of her businesses called Beats for Health a few years ago. Our moderator for today's event is the one and only Nikki Clarke. Welcome, Nikki.
Oh, thank you so much for the warm welcome. Good evening or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thank you for joining us today for this wonderful webinar, Mental Health, the Impact of COVID-19, Navigating Current and Future Mental Challenges. But before we start our conversation, I'd like to take a moment to say that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewas, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And I'd also like to cover a few housekeeping topics before we begin. Today's webinar is being recorded and televised, and we will share how to access this session after it's over. So we welcome you to revisit the content and share it with your colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions. So please look out for the Q&A chat box on your screen below. And if you think of a question for the speakers at any point, just type it in and we'll make sure to acknowledge it. And we'll post it on our speakers and at the time, hold it to the discussion portion at the end of the event. And we have several questions that have been generated that we'll be posing to our panelists. And as a reminder, if you have a question that you have not yet submitted, please enter it in the Q&A chat box and we'll get to it and through it as quickly as we can as time allows. Now, we're going to hear from a number of people, and we're going to start off from a message wishing a wonderful Black History Month, and from our Mayor Tory, as well as a 1-minute public service announcement about mental health, and also a bio video of Moses Mawa, the founder of Afro Global, the CEO of Silver Trust Media, and the Transformation Institute.
Hello, I'm Mayor John Tory, and I'm proud to recognize and celebrate February as Black History Month in the City of Toronto. This Black History Month feels a bit different than the ones we've celebrated before. The past few months have not been easy for Black Torontonians. We've witnessed horrific incidents of anti-Black racism abroad as well as here at home, which is why acknowledging this month is more important than ever. COVID-19 has heightened the existing social and economic inequities that exist within our city and within marginalized groups in our city. And I know that the overwhelming sense of grief and frustration and pain felt during the summer of 2020 continued to burden the hearts and minds of far too many. There is no denying that the current times have been challenging, and yet we continue to see demonstrations of strength and of ingenuity and creativity and resilience and resistance from Black Torontonians. In the last year, we've seen tens of thousands of people who took to the streets to call for the end of anti-Black racism, a movement that was strong across the world and that covered a very wide consensus of our population. And we've also seen many community leaders who've amplified the voices of marginalized and vulnerable among Black communities. In response, much has been done and accomplished, but so much more needs to be done. And this has only inspired us to do more. And we are committed to doing so. I encourage non-Black Torontonians to learn more about anti-Black racism, the many ways in which it hinders the lives and the health and the overall well-being of Black Torontonians, and more importantly, learn ways for you to also take part in the fight against it and to be a better ally. As mayor, I remain resolute and firm on my commitment to tackling anti-Black racism within our institutions and our society. This is a critical part of how I honor the history of Black Torontonians and Black Canadians. Anti-Black racism and racism in general has no place in our city. All of these Heritage Months are about us getting to know more about each other. This is a must in the most diverse city in the world, because history shapes who we are, for all of us. It offers us help in ensuring we can support each other and, depending on the circumstances and experiences we've had, adjust and make changes to that kind of support. It teaches us about the good that we want to see repeated and the bad we don't ever want to see happen again. And so to our Black Torontonians, happy Black History Month. And to those Torontonians who are not Black, please go online and participate. You will learn something, as I certainly have every single year during Black Heritage Month, and it will help us to continue to build a respectful, embracing city that is the envy of the world.
Deep concerns and anxiety during disruptive times can be overwhelming. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. Take care of your mental, physical, and emotional health for your sake and for the people around you. Take deep breaths, meditate, eat healthy, exercise regularly, get plenty of sleep, and connect with others. You deserve to be well. When in crisis, call 911. Otherwise, contact a crisis or distress center near you. This message is brought to you by the Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation and other partners. Moses A. Mawa is the president of Silver Trust, Afro Global Television, Destiny, and the Transformation Institute. He is the architect of business, media, ministry, and social innovation brands, including the Crossover Mentorship Program. Moses co-founded the Marcus Garvey Institute with Dr. Julius Garvey, son of the legendary Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and their associate, Michael Dawson. As a film and television executive, Moses has produced Synergy, Standing Ovation, The Minister, the Omabella drama series, and contents for other private and public sector establishments. His Excellence Awards initiative has honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, Bernice King, Bob Marley's wife, Rita Marley, Nobel laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka, Jamaica's first female Prime Minister, Portia Simpson Miller, South African music superstar, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, and others. The Transformation Program has awarded many Canadian leaders and innovators. Publisher of Envision, Destiny, Legacy, Diversity, Excellence, and the Discover Magazine series, Moses has authored the 150 Extraordinary Canadians Legacy book with his wife Patricia, the foreword by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In 2016, Moses and his team launched Afro Global Television, a 24-hour super channel that informs, empowers, uplifts, and entertains with great programming. Moses received the York Regional Police Civic Leadership Award, Real World Visionary Award, the Harry Jerome Media Award, Toronto Police Community Service Award, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. In 2013, CNN featured Moses and Patricia in a half-hour worldwide television broadcast, calling them the Power Couple. In 2019, Moses participated in the Royal Canadian Navy's leadership program. A proud husband and father, Moses holds a BA degree in film studies from Carleton University, among other achievements and honors.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the Community Resilience Program presented by the Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation. This is a free webinar series that is actually presented via Zoom with registration that's available on Eventbrite. If you have missed any part of this amazing program, you really need to stay tuned, because we have a few more that are actually coming up in the coming weeks. The series actually includes a session on fortitude and resilience, thriving in turbulent times, and how to build a culture of resilience. And today's program, which is on mental health, it's about the impact of COVID-19, navigating mental health challenges. And hereafter, we are going to have another session on business and personal finance. And it's going to be about managing your business and finances during these disruptive times. And we will also be having a special one actually on health and wellness. It's going to be about the pillars of optimum health during such a pandemic as this one that we are going through right now. We will also have a unique session on education. It's going to be about addressing systemic disparities in education for students of color. I'm quite delighted about this particular one, because we do have experts in the field of education who are actually going to be involved with us to bring some amazing information for us to partake. And the last one in the series is actually about heritage, and we will be presenting 25 years of Black History Month, and then, now, and the future. Some of you may not actually be aware that the official celebration of Black History Month in this beautiful nation of Canada has actually been in existence for 25 years already. So that means it's a silver jubilee that we will actually be celebrating. I would like to basically let you know that today's program is actually very unique, because it's about the impact of COVID-19, navigating mental challenges, which is actually something that is affecting so many communities, and the Black community is actually not an exception. It's basically, a free event, and we encourage you to, once this event is actually over, to be able to also share the material and information and the schedule when it's actually going to be on television as well. And it is actually, like I said, a part of the Community Resilience Program, a webinar series that is presented actually by the Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation, and also with the participation of the Canadian Red Cross, the Government of Canada, Afro Global Television, and Silver Trust Communications. The purpose of this particular series is actually really to enable us to be able to survive COVID-19, but then also to be able to bounce back better. We kind of coined that, phrase, and please let's get it trending. On social media, we are actually on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and any information that you receive about this or any of our initiatives, please do your very best to share it so that the associated links can actually lead people to obtain some very useful material or information. So I'll now give you just a little bit of information about the Transformation Institute before we continue with the rest of the program. The vision of the Transformation Institute is to unlock the impact of good leadership and to accelerate positive change through innovation. The Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation has been established with the vision of improving lives and also personal as well as collective success. Our operational strategy is actually predicated on the importance of minimizing costs and then maximizing the impact of our work through collaboration, technology, and the harnessing of volunteerism, as well as our immensely incredible diversity in this beautiful nation of Canada. The key objectives include providing strategic mentorship for our youth, women, as well as our men, undertaking capacity building programs for sound leadership, transforming lives for good through research and innovation, advancing great values such as harmony as well as cultural diversity, maximizing the positive impact of good citizenship, as well as, of course, our amazing immigrants as well. And lastly, but not least, accelerating performance, conferring fellowships as well as awards. I am very, very happy to be, presenting to you this amazing program. I am sure you are actually going to find it very insightful and encouraging and also uplifting. So please take care of yourself and anyone that is around you as we move forward. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Moses Mawa, the co-founder of Silver Trust Media. Thank you for your remarks. And I have to say thank you. Congratulations for creating this wonderful platform. And it's it's a great message that many of us need to hear. So very excited to start. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's meet our panelists. Noah Mugenyi is a mental health professional, community advocate, a speaker, an educator, and author, and he's a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, a member of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, and a member of the International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Therapy. One of his main interests is the subjective experience of trauma and the development of post-traumatic stress disorder and the brain. Noah currently serves as a clinical director of the Toronto East Psychotherapy and Psychological Services, and recently as addictions counselor at Bellwood Edgewood Health Network. I'd also like to introduce our next panelist, Joshua Houeto. Joshua is a motivator, a Christian spiritual leader, creative, rapper, singer, songwriter, and entrepreneur who has an uncanny gift of communication, which he uses to impact youth, houses of worship, as well as the community at large. Having suffered unimaginable tragedies and losses, he has come out refined and fortified, and now uses his story and his gifts to empower individuals to discover their purpose, reach their full potential, and ultimately experience the radical transformation that comes from intimately knowing Jesus Christ. Nicole Waldron, welcome. Nicole is an inspirational speaker and mental fitness coach. She's the voice of Victory, host Victory Speaks. And Victory Speaks is an entity where iron sharpens iron. And she's dedicated to inspiring you to live a victorious lifestyle and believes that we all need to be mentally fit so we can finish our race in the journey of life. Victory is not about the win, it's about being able to cross the finish line as your best self. It's your personal victory. Welcome, Nicole. Welcome all the panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's start off the conversation, shall we? And I want to go around and ask everyone this question. In the wake of the pandemic, what has it been for you? What's the hardest part of this pandemic and the experience? And how have you been coping with it? So I will open the question up to Nicole. Can you answer that question for us?
So, hi, Nikki, and thank you everyone for joining. It's such a pleasure to be here. The hardest part in the pandemic, I think at first was actually just as an event planner, and most people know me as an event planner, is losing all my contracts all at the same time. Everything just went to zero. But there was an opportunity in the crisis because it was time to re-envision oneself. It was time to reimagine again And so it's been okay. And one of the things I've been doing is, taking time to self-reflect, taking time, to do visionary task again, reconnecting with friends and families that, when you're busy, you kind of miss those moments, and being intentional about that, being intentional about connecting. So that's just some of what I've been doing. And of course, some emotional eating on the side. Let's be real. it's not all a bed of roses. I'm doing some emotional eating on the side. So yeah.
I'm right with you. I hear you on that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. Noah.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for that introduction, and of course, all the panelists and our organizers, brother Mawa and sister Patricia. I'm a little bit, I need to pinch myself. Every time I share a platform, a conversation with these two, they are from Uganda. So I look at them as of course, my mentors. Yes, the pandemic has really not been easy on everybody, as we know. My hardest challenge was actually not seeing my clients face to face, because as a clinician, you do a lot of observations and really participate into the therapeutic work that you do with your people. So that was a miss, something that we are trying to navigate with our clients. But the other thing is also, that quality time that's spent with friends, like my sister Nicole is saying here, and the community, the church, and giving back to volunteering, the way we like to do things. How am I coping? Every day, as a clinician, I like to preach what I do. I am a big Mawa knows me as a swimmer who participated and swam for the Ugandan team before I became Canadian. I run every day. I swim. I do tobogganing with my two daughters. I try to really stand at a distance, coordinate with my neighbors and stuff like that. So it's been tough, but we are trying to navigate.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Noah. Joshua, same question.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So excited to share the panel with everybody else. I actually went to university with Noah, so that's kind of crazy. So good to see you.
Nice.
And Moses and Patricia, God bless you guys. I love you guys. And pandemic has been hard, I think, for all of us. I think first and foremost, because of the revealing that it's been doing, I think, for myself and just everybody in the world. And what I mean by revealing is I really believe that pressure reveals what's inside of you. Like a lot of things happen in the pandemic, like all of a sudden couples are getting divorced, and it's like, look at what the pandemic is doing. No, the pandemic didn't do that. The pandemic just revealed that there was an issue that they didn't deal with, right? So I really feel that the pandemic has, because we're forced to spend more time with ourselves, you can't just, go with the monotony and business of life. So you have to confront the stuff that you kind of hid. So that's always difficult, right? So, but I also think it's a blessing because it kind of helps you become a better person. So how I've been coping is just my number one thing, first and foremost. I'm a big Jesus guy till the end, just, prayer, trying to stay close to God, relationships, and just taking that time for self-care and, just to get your mind off what's kind of going on. And lastly, just the most difficult thing is to see the casualties that we suffered losing Kobe Bryant, like just seeing what it's doing to people around you, people dying, like that's been hard. That's been difficult.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing. And for those watching, how have you been coping during the pandemic? Please send in your responses to the chat. We'd love to hear from you. All right, so we'll go on to our next question. And this one is going to Nicole. What does mental health mean to you?
So mental health to me is really about how you are thinking. And it's a very broad question, but it really is how you are operating in your life, how you're feeling emotionally, which connects to how you're dealing with physically. Without your mental health and wellness intact, it affects every part of your being. So your mental health is key to everything that you do and who you are. And people like to just think of mental health as something that is out there, and they forget that. I always ask people, where does your mind live? Where does your emotional? It lives in your brain. And I'm so glad like Noah and Joshua are here and they get this. It's connected to your brain. And, so Noah, as what he does, knows this. Joshua, dealing with Christ, knows that's the mind of Christ. So it all comes together. Mental health starts in our brain and in our cells. And as I know we go into the conversation, we will see the connections of our mental health and the chemistry in our bodies and how we think and operate and trauma.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm going to ask this question of Noah. Many people suffer from mental illness without even recognizing the signs of mental illness. What are the signs or symptoms of mental illness? And also, can you share the common types?
It's really tricky whenever I really speak to our community, and these are communities of color, or the marginalized, as I like to call them. I like to really differentiate the difference between mental health and wellness and mental illness. Right. Growing up for me, whenever I had anything to do with mental, was like maybe it's somebody who needs a kind of like support. So I was distancing myself away from it. That was when I was still in my former job. But getting into the psych and the clinical counseling, I understand that mental health is good for everybody. And that's something we should run to. Like my sister Nicole said, the mind, the body, for some, the spirituality is all intertwined. And sometimes we might be going through, you mentioned the signs, the symptoms. Somebody could be going through anxiety or stress like we are dealing with right now. And that can actually move from the lower levels of severity to higher levels, whereby somebody is struggling, sleeping, going to bed. You would think when you're tired, you sleep. No, but when your mind really thinks and thinks and thinks over, like Nick said, everything starts up here. And you're probably talking to yourself, and maybe you're not able to express that in the better way possible. That can be actually a symptom of mental illness or mental disturbances. We have depression, anxiety. For some of the people that might require actually immediate, and I repeat that, immediate support, are those people who are going through chronic stressors that could lead to self-harm or harming another person. So if you're really feeling like the cloud, I call them the clouds, when they're so heavy on your head and you feel like you are struggling a bit to get out of bed, speak to your family doctor, speak to your spouse, speak to a friend. Mental illness is really tackled from different angles. Personally, as a clinician, I believe it begins when we start talking about these things.
Excellent. No, I also wanted to ask you, what if you don't have support? Where can you turn to? Some people don't, they're for some reason maybe alone in Canada or settled in a city where they don't have immediate family or support. Where can they go?
I like to mention that in my book, I outlined that mental health services or support, they may be available, but they're not accessible to everybody, or people don't have the right information. I call it the maze of accessing mental health tools in my book. Definitely, Joshua mentioned of the spirituality, the prayer, which of course I believe in myself, being a Christian myself. Maybe you may not have a friend, an immediate friend to talk to, but I like to think that even when we talk on paper or when we speak to our diary, in this case, spirituality, God, Allah, and all of that sort, for the indigenous community, it could be as simple as meditating and sitting in a quiet space to really reflect on what it is going on. That is also communicating. So I would say, really try to find ways to connect. Connecting is the key word there. Connect. When you keep things in here, issues may seem to be like gigantic, rather than when you speak to somebody. If I call Josh, I might say, buddy, it's tough. And then he might say the same thing. Then that leverages for me to think I'm not alone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Sometimes traumatic situations can alter one's life and lead to serious emotional consequences. And right now, many people have lost their jobs or they've lost a loved one. Joshua, you've experienced a few losses in your life. And how did you overcome all of the losses? How were you able to bounce back?
We're definitely in a time where we're facing the reality of loss. We can all kind of resonate and connect with that. theme of loss. And that's right. I took my spiritual journey really seriously in about 2010. And then you think that everything would get all merry and jolly. But then my mother died in 2011. And then my father died in 2012. And then 2018, I lost my auntie, which was my mother's sister. And just as we're coming into 2020, right before the whole COVID stuff, my cousin, which was one of my mom's sisters, or my mom's sister's son, so my auntie's son, who's like the same age as me, died. So it's just like kind of like nonstop. And honestly, I really think it was just me being rooted in Christ that helped me first and foremost. I think, there's a quote that says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think the fact that I found something to stand for right before I took all of those blows, it really helped me out. And I always say this, rock bottom is a place that we dread the most, but rock bottom is actually the place of significant growth, right? Because at rock bottom, you don't have anywhere else to go, right? So I always say at rock bottom is where I found the rock, right? Because I believe the blessedness of pain and pressure and loss is that it disconnects you from the world. You ever watch The Matrix, like that movie, The Matrix, where they're all living in an illusion? And it was all like, I really believe we're living in a matrix. Like, it's social media, it's all fake, right? So even the Bible says it's better to be in a place where there's a funeral going on than to be in a place where there's a party going on. Because when you're in a funeral, it makes you reflect on the reality of life, right? So when I started thinking about these real things, the darkness that I was in, I started asking real questions, not like, how do I be more popular? But, people die. I'm going to die one day. Why am I on earth? Right? So now, as I started asking these questions, I started drawing closer to God. And the Bible says, if you draw close to God, he'll draw close to you. So he started showing me who I was. What is the purpose of even loss? If you read the book of Job, it's all about loss. So I found God in my darkness. I found purpose in darkness. So I believe the advantage of pain and loss is that we find purpose and we get disconnected from the matrix. And secondly, I was so blessed to have some amazing support beside me. I was taken in by a family, a pastoral family, and I was just close to people that were really rooted in God. And that really helped me mentally, spiritually, just the things that I learned. And this is what I'll just end with. This is what I'll end with. To a lot of people that are depressed about what's going on and you are suffering loss. If this was all there was, then indeed your loss is a great tragedy. If this was all there was, if this was the end. But if there's more than this, if there's a heaven, if there's a place where there's no more weeping or no more crying, there's no more pain, if there is another chapter after life, then this is not, then you know that this is not as great a tragedy as your mind would like you to think it is. So having the perspective of eternity, knowing that there's more, just changes your paradigm and your perspective. So just developing a perspective that helped me understand that there's more than this, and even my pain has a purpose.
I like that. You reevaluate your life and understand the purpose through your pain. Thank you so much, Joshua, for sharing that. I have a question for Nicole. In any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experiences a mental illness or addiction, but only a small percentage of people living with mental illness seek help. Now, what are the reasons for this, Nicole?
So I'm going to backtrack just for 1 second and just add on to something that Noah says, and it will tie into the answer for this. Because you asked about common illnesses and mental illnesses. Yeah. And so there's anxiety and there's depression. But one thing that is very prevalent in society right now is psychosis, bipolar, schizophrenia, concurrent disorders. And people forget that alcoholism is also a mental illness. And now you ask about addiction. So when you put all those things together and the different signs and symptoms that happens, because mental illness is affecting your thinking, and it alters your behavior, there's a shame that comes with it. the society has, especially for our community as a whole, we have always been taught to be strong, to be resilient, and especially for Black women have had a different type of strength we have to hold, and Black men have a different type of strength that they've had to hold. So when they start to feel down, it makes them feel weak. And so our messaging from the past has sent some messaging to us now that we're living here. And in our community especially, we have had this taboo way of dealing with mental illness. We don't like to talk about cancer, and we don't like to talk about mental illness. People have used the languaging of crazy. So language, and so like when I say victory speaks, is because we have to be mindful of what we speak. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Are you going to speak life, or are you going to speak death? So because we've been speaking about mental illness from a place of death, from a place of weakness, from a place of shame, people are not willing to seek the help. And so even though they may be cognizant, I am not doing well. A lot of us know when we're not doing well. If anyone tells me that they're 100% every day of the year, well, I don't know who they are. The only person I know that can be, and it's not a person, it's a spirit, it's God. So I've experienced depression, and I've gone from highs to low. In this pandemic, let me tell you, I am so grateful for the pandemic, and for one reason, that people who never understood anxiety and depression finally get it, that it's not something you can just easily think yourself out of. Yes, your thinking is related to your mental wealth and health, but it's not just the only thing. So when people start thinking about being weak, if I go to work and I say that I'm not doing well, if, for Black families, if they go and say, oh, I need to go get professional help, and they've been through trauma. And I mean, some people have been through some serious trauma, and they go to their families and say, well, I think I need to go get some counseling. Or my counselor said, I need medication, and they've actually had the courage to do it. Families tell to some, it's not all families, some families or friends says, you don't need to do that, man. You good, we're resilient, we're like this. And I go into my Trini accent because I have to talk a little Trini here. And then I love my church, but then we have the church that demonizes mental illness and do not realize it's not just about this demonic force. Your brain has been altered in its nervous, makeup, and it's causing things to misfire. We don't demonize when somebody has a heart attack. We don't demonize people when they have cancer, when they have diabetes. We pray for them, and then we say, go to the doctor and get help. But from the minute somebody says, I'm having a problem with my mental wellness, we start to say, oh, you need to do whatever. And so these are some of the things. It's all about how society has presented it. And as I wrap this little, it's so deep and so layered, Nikki, that I ask people, here's my challenge to anyone listening today and anyone that you share this with. Listen to your language. How are you speaking about mental illness? How about you speaking about yourself when you're not feeling so well, when you're feeling the sadness or the depression? Stop using words like people like crazy. That sends me up a pick and cotton wall. I want to come and shake people through the internet when they start saying, this person's so crazy. No, they're not crazy. They're just not well. So think about your languaging. And because you're telling somebody they're crazy, when they're feeling down, they're not going to come and tell you because you've basically judged them. Judgment is the reason that people do not come forth with their mental status in life.
Right. The stigma, the labels placed upon the judgments create this barrier, right, to getting help. Thank you so much, Nicole. And there's also an opioids crisis in Canada at the moment, especially among the youth. So what do you think can be done about this, Noah?
Thank you so much, Nikki. Yeah, I'm so glad that we are really chatting and talking about these things, because the more we normalize these conversations, the better. Our children, our youth, our leaders, our pastors, they really lean towards understanding people who are going through these difficulties. Right this year, the beginning, it's just a month, we've had almost 2, young men really getting into the induced psychosis Nicole is talking about. And this could be related to other things, biological, culture, and, there's no one answer, but there's a high increase, according to Toronto Public Health. They just realized that, of course, people are going through difficulties this time, but the number we used to think every 4 or 5 Canadian, you see one person is going through a challenge, maybe a diagnosis, prescription, maybe from a doctor and all of that. Right now, the number is climbed to almost 7 out of 10 people you see. These people are really struggling. For me, when I look at the addiction, when I'm treating trauma and addiction, maybe there's always a crossover that people may be drinking because of the stress, because of the past trauma, but that's just a symptom. And then you have the underlying issues. Science says that when you are seeking psychotherapy, it's better to even have the medication as a back end, as a family doctor may advise you to take it. But it's always something I encourage people to really check in with their family doctor as well, what they're taking. It's not just get prescribed by the medicine or take the medicine. You could be crossing over 2 medications that don't interact. So speak with these healthcare professionals, speak with your therapist, but the conversation starts when you really reach out to the right support. And of course, the support will continue being there, but we need to really reach out. And of course, when we see these symptoms in our people, we need to really support them, like Nicole said, rather than shunning them or shutting them down.
You know, you were talking to know about the opioid crisis.
Mhm.
And I think people are also forgetting that when people do not have, just like alcohol. So, you know, people ask, why is the LCBO open? Because it's considered a necessary thing that one needs to have, because people who are alcoholics need access to alcohol.
Right.
The same thing, if you were to talk to families, if you were to talk to some clinicians, and no one knows this, what I'm talking about is that the access to drugs, like you have those programs, we have to have safe sites, we have to have, there is a problem as well in Canada too, that there are people who want to go get help for their opioid problem. We do not have the beds. We do not have the facilities. There are people who are going into hospitals and 2 days later, 2 weeks later are being released, and there is no rehab spaces left for them to go to. And this is a bigger part of the conversation, but this is why some of them are stuck and they go back home and they repeat the same thing. And the provinces have to start talking, because Vancouver has some really robust systems that Toronto doesn't have. People don't have, they don't even want to be willing to talk about that. My loved one has an opioid problem, but it's an illness. And because their behavior is even exacerbated more, even sometimes worse than like somebody in psychosis, with an active manic episode with psychosis, we shun them because they're stealing, they have to feed their habits, and they become criminalized. But we cannot address any mental illness, especially the opioid crisis, without addressing the Mental Health Act. And that's something that we need to talk about, not today, but this is demonizing. And I mean it from the point of, we are criticizing those who are addicts, but they want help. Nobody wants to be an addict.
Right.
But there is a lack of places for them to go. And we need to start talking about this in Canada.
Nicole, I wanted to ask you this question. So according to data released by CAMH, about 4,000 Canadians per year die by suicide. And that's an average of almost 11 suicides a day. As a mental fitness coach, what tips, Nicole, can you share with people regarding how to maintain their mental health so as not to fall into the grips of the point of suicide?
So suicide, it's a big one. And let me say this first. Anyone who ends up committing suicide is not doing it from a selfish place. It's from a place of pain that they're trying to relieve themselves of. So let's just put that out there. And because mental illness is an illness, and the depression that takes over, you can have somebody that's good today, or maybe even good right now, and an hour from now, they go and say they can't live anymore. So we have to look at how we're feeling. We have to start addressing it early. And I say to parents, I say to anyone, start looking at yourself, especially now in COVID. How are you feeling? Be honest with yourself. Have an accountability person. Find someone you can trust. And sometimes it's not the person directly in your life, you know. I may not be able to call Nikki because Nikki and I are so close. I'm a little ashamed to say Nikki, you know. I might prefer to call Joshua because I just saw Joshua online. Okay, Joshua seems to know what he's talking about. And I might feel safer. It's about creating the safe spaces to talk and share how you're feeling. I would say, you know, you have to exercise, because you need those serotonin levels in your bodies to be at par, and all the different chemicals to be acting. Even if you're stretching and walking down the hall, whether you're in a house or apartment. If you're in a house, go outside in the backyard. If you're in an apartment, go walk the hallways. What are you eating? Look at your sugar intake. Look at your all those different. It's not going to solve the problem. Look at your B12s. Look at your vitamin Ds. Are you taking your protein? What are you doing for your health? Because it's all connected. Start reading and interact with someone, especially if you're living alone. But even if you're not living alone, you're seeing the same people all the time. You have to, do some Zoom calls, do some Zoom family calls. Go back to, you remember the times, I don't know, Noah and Joshua, but I remember the times when I used to write letters, I used to, I love receiving the mail, oh my God, what's in the mail? And there's this card and somebody sends you a beautiful card just because send yourself some flowers. It may sound so simple, but even like as I'm sitting here, I create an environment. If people say they're zoomed out, I'm saying stop speaking negative. Listen to yourself, because your brain doesn't know. And if you keep sending your brain those negative messages, 6 seconds to get it in, how many times to get it out? It's numerous times to get it out. So I created a space. Okay, light a candle, something nice to smell. Put something soothing around you. Be conscious if you need to take a long shower. If you need to have a good cry, have the doggone good cry. Mm-hmm. If you need to scream into the pillow, scream into the pillow. Pray. When you can't pray, put on the worship music. If you can't pray, send somebody a text. I need you to pray for me. Joshua, it's on a scale of 1 to 10. And sometimes you can say how you're really feeling. Yeah. And especially for your young children, ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? 1 means this, 10 means that. Do you feel like living? Don't ask them if they want to kill themselves. Yes. Do you feel like you still want to be here? Mm-hmm. So the list is long. So that's just some of it. And I hope that helps. Nikki, absolutely. I hope I answered your question.
Just glancing here at the chat. No, those are wonderful tips. And we have someone here, the abbreviation RLH. He says, very good tips. Peace says, great talks. I'm really enjoying this. God bless you all. Who is Joan Pierre says, plus Nicole says there needs to be a place for them to go. The best for them in our community is a place run by folks that look like them, so they will be more comfortable opening up, and that can lead to help. So just a couple of comments that I'm glancing in the chat, and we'll have another opportunity in a few minutes for a Q&A. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask this question of Joshua. Thank you so much, Nicole. Joshua, you are a motivational speaker and a Christian leader, and what would you say to someone who's been hit bad by COVID and their challenges? How would you encourage them?
What I would say is use this opportunity to clean the house. And what I mean by that is, like I said in the introduction, I think that COVID has really presented an opportunity for a revealing, right? And we live in such a society where we're so focused on how the outside looks, right? So for example, when it's Christmas time, we can decorate the outside of the house, and you drive by the houses on Lakeshore, like, wow, that house looks so beautiful. That's amazing, man. But you don't know how the inside of the house looks. For all you know, they can be hoarders. For all you know, it could be like, run down, and it could be like a human trafficking hub. You don't know how the inside of the house looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, like I said, the blessedness of COVID, it's a very serious issue, but there's always a positive, even in the negative, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that COVID can really give us the opportunity to go inside, like literally, because we had to go in quarantine and stay inside the house, but also emotionally and mentally and spiritually, right? Like, go inside the house and clean it, see what's inside there, like see the patterns that lead to maybe your anger issues or the issues that you have that you've just kind of been caught in, but you haven't really gone there. And I think that 3 things happen when you allow yourself to be real. And when I talked about how I coped with like the losses in my life, a big thing was just really being honest with where I was. honest about how I felt. Even though I had faith in God, there was times like, God, I don't even want to follow you right now. Like I had to be honest with God. I had to be so transparent. I think transparency brings healing, right? And so we're designed to want control. So COVID has stripped us away from being in control. But again, the blessing in that is for us to examine the state of the house. And I think once that happens, three things happen. Number one, once you go inside the house, you're going to see things you don't want to see. And I think that's what scares a lot of us to go deep. Like I talked to some people and like, oh, I lost my mother and I know I need to go to counseling, but I don't want to. I just been overworking. Like, so subconsciously the person knows that I need to address this issue, but I know if I address this issue, I will uncover things that will be too painful for me to bear. But you're not going to heal without that pain. I always say illumination begins with confrontation. You won't heal from what you don't confront. So number one, you're going to see things you don't like, so even in the real world, when you're cleaning your house, you're going to see things that, you don't like. Oh man, this is messy. I got to put some bleach in this. I got to clean it. Number two, you're going to find things you didn't know was there. That $20 I lost 2 years ago, my gosh, look at it. Like, not only will you see things you don't like, but when you have the courage to face and confront yourself, that's where you find your potential. God will bring things out of you that you didn't know was inside of you to begin with. And then the third thing is once the house is clean, you can now restructure. Let me change my bed around this way. You can now change your space around mentally, emotionally, psychologically, right? So what I would say to somebody is, as difficult as it is, and I tell you, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Address the mess. Be honest about what you feel. And don't run away from it, but run towards it. Run towards it. And you might see things you don't like. But that also may cause you to discover a version of yourself that you never knew was there. Like, even if I bring it back to the Bible, why is the greatest things that ever happened found in places of pain? Why did the resurrection come after the crucifixion? Like, you can't have the daylight without the nighttime, right? So joy does come in the morning, but you first have to weep in the night. So it sounds like counterintuitive, but like it goes against society, but feel the pain and bring people into it. And that's what I would say to people struggling with COVID.
So thank you so much, Joshua. A comment from the chat. Someone says, you're not going to heal without the pain. They like that quote. They say it's very deep. And J-Cell says, this is so true. I'm a virtual clutter coach, and this is the type of work I do with clients. It's a complete game changer. Yes, step into the discovery. Thank you so much, Joshua. I'm going to ask this question of Noah. Noah, statistics show that Canadians in the lowest income group are 3 to 4 times more likely than those in the highest income group to report poor to fair mental health. What does the social determinants of health have to do with how mental illness disproportionately affects African Canadians and people of color? Noah?
Communities that are deprived of maybe some support and social services may actually struggle, as we've seen. I work with some communities that are really hit hard, like the Regent Park, the Jen and Finch. In Scarborough, I have a few clients that, of course, we see. If somebody, you spoke about the social determinants of health. If somebody is, of course, struggling even to pay their bill for their rent, trust me, their sleep may not be that good for that night. I'm just giving an example. So we speak of housing, which is shelter, the food, education for some people, or health. So accessing some of these wellness and mental wellness supports may not be so easy for somebody who is actually struggling to have a meal or a check for their next rent. So how are they going to really even think of contacting a therapist? And some of these services are not also covered. I'm lucky to say that some of the networks that I work with, some social supports the City of Toronto, some social workers, counselors, some of these clinicians have what we call the pro bono. So I tell our community members not to shy away from reaching out. Our people in the communities of color, I like to really point that out. They have really suffered lots. I had a call with the mayor as well on this, and we had a chat with my area city councillor. And we agreed that some of these people are really struggling than others. We've seen a high rise in reaching out for food stamps at, these food banks. Domestic violence is also increasing in homes for women and children. Nicole spoke about, even speaking out to our children. Kids may not actually express things the way we do. So they may just shy away from school. They don't want to engage. So when you start seeing this behavior seriously, let's just take a next step, just inquiring and gently creating that safe space. But yes, to answer your question, our people still need a lot of supports more than an average Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Noah. We're going to kind of open up the floor right now to anyone who has any questions. The panelists, any epiphanies, aha moments that they'd like to share. Please submit your questions, post them to the chat so we can share them. How about Nicole, you help me with the first question. Do you see that there?
Okay, yes. How can we help condition people with mental illness that's suicide is not to tell them suicide is not an option? Does building faith help? Yes, building faith does help. And we like to tell people that suicide is not an option. We don't want it to be an option for them. And it's just letting them know that they matter. It's also letting them know that, giving them a reason to live, reminding them why they're important. Sometimes it's, about who they are. They might be their children, why they're important to them, reminding them of their value, their identity. Remember, it's an identity crisis. Remember, it's about you feeling devalued as a person. And as the more you think about it, you go down the rabbit hole. And then the more you think about it, you go further down the rabbit hole. So you have to help bring them back out of the rabbit hole and release the lies and replace it with truth. And remember, fear is false evidence appearing real. So find out the fears that they're feeling about their lives. What is that false evidence that appears real to somebody? And it's all based, it all starts with some semblance of a lie about themselves or about how they are to other people. Mm-hmm. And faith, let me tell you, my faith has kept me. And I just want to add this. Remember families. We forget that when someone has an illness, and especially a mental illness, it's the whole family that's affected. And we don't take care of the families because if you're on suicide watch, if you've never had to be on suicide watch for your loved one, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And you get depleted, and your mental illness, if somebody has a loved one with high anxiety, high depression, they could be a compulsive, whatever, especially if they're in psychosis and they cannot get help right away because they can be released from hospital within 2 days. You have to do that self-care, not just for that person, but the families are so important. There's a running joke, which is not a joke and I tell it to everybody for caregivers of loved ones with a mental illness. Has anyone brought you a casserole? The answer to that is no. They bring us casseroles when it's somebody with cancer. But I'll tell you, the 5 years of my journey as a family caregiver, I've had just a couple people send a meal to my house.
Right.
And it's very expensive. So we have to remember the caregivers in this conversation because their mental wellness is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We have a question for Noah and Joshua. How can the church help people know that mental health can be a clinical condition and not necessarily demons to be simply cast out? Joshua, can you answer that? And then we'll go to Noah.
Yeah, that question is so deep. And I really love it. I think it sounds basic, but the church can help by first and foremost just like doing what the Bible says, right? I think sometimes when we're demonizing mental health, we're not really being biblical because we get Christianity and we get God wrong when we think it's just a spiritual thing. right? But the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he, right? And there's another scripture that says, Paul is writing to the Corinthians, I believe, and he's saying, I pray that you prosper even as your soul prospers, right? So sometimes he's like, yo, I want you to prosper financially. I want you to prosper socially. It's holistic, it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, but first let's work on the prosperity of your soul, right? So we need to take these biblical principles and understanding that even Christ himself, didn't just like demonize people. The people that the Pharisees actually demonized, Jesus didn't just say, I'm just going to cast the demon out of you. He sat down with them. He had conversation. I think that's part of mental health. Like he just sat down and talked to them. He came down to their level. The Pharisees are like, why are you sitting with this sinner? Why are you sitting with this prostitute? Let's throw some stones at her. He's like, wait, I'm inviting her to my dinner. And he's like, let me conversate with her. So he was able to give a spiritual breakthrough, right? But there was also an emotional connection, right? Because, and I'll end with this scripture. It says, we don't have a high priest that cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmity. That just that blows my mind for me personally, because when I came to God, I was like a super commando. I'm like, I'm just gonna give my life to Christ. I will be a martyr. If they kill me for the gospel, then sure, right? But then as I started learning about that, I felt like God was trying to teach me, listen, I love that you want to go all out, but I also care about how you feel. I also care when you don't feel happy. There's, I don't just want you to do all these things for me. I also care about your emotions, your feelings, that when you feel a mental issue, when you're struggling with mental illness, I feel that. I think the breakthrough starts there, that God feels it. And once we can encapsulate and capture the heart of Christ, that he feels it, then we can go deeper into practical steps. So once we understand that, yeah, we can bring the spiritual component, but we can also bring people like Noah, like registered people that have a background in psychotherapy, in counseling, even medication, right? Because I've dealt with mental health issues myself because of everything that I've been through. Sometimes there's a chemical issue. We have to look at God is also the God over science and over astronomy. And if we can understand that and not be afraid of it, we can utilize that and understand that that's not going to take us away from our faith, but it's rather going to supplement and build our faith. But just be realistic and understand that the Bible is all about transitioning your spirituality into practicality. If your Christianity is just spiritual, but it doesn't translate to how you treat people and translate to how you handle money, it's about stewardship and how you deal with the mind, then it's not real Christianity, right? So just take the principles and make it practical, instead of just trying to be over spiritual and, just say like, nah, that's the devil, right? So come down to people's level. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Joshua. Noah.
Thanks, Brother Joshua. I would say I would just add a little piece in terms of safety. Seriously, Joshua, you've analyzed that very well, I think, from a spiritual perspective. I made an argument during my program that theology informs psychology, and I really can wrestle that with people who want to really talk. The reality is we must also really understand the boundaries, whereby, for me, if I know I'm not trained and qualified in that area or to treat that condition, I'm going to refer. So what I normally tell our pastors and our clergymen, be it imams and pastors, is really creating a safe space. I think Nicole hinted that. Without a safe space for these people to really express their needs like they did with Jesus, like Joshua put it, we have no talks, we have no conversation, there's no movement. So I believe also that our people who might be reaching out to their spiritual care supports, you have to really draw, I want you to feel safe about reaching out. At the same time, some of our people, what I've really encountered is actually the protection of the confidentiality, which is something that we clinicians, like I believe Nicole is also licensed as a coach, you protect the confidentiality of these therapeutic conversations. So people come to you knowing that nothing is going to get out of these cracks of the walls as you have these conversations. But they should also know or hint to their pastor or their spiritual leaders that this is something that's going on, but I also pray or hope that you would respect my privacy, because sometimes people would just shy away from reaching out to these supports.
Thank you so much, Noah. I'm also going to ask you this question that's here in the Q&A. Some people believe that medication makes people that have mental illnesses become dependent. This makes them worse if they stop the medication. What do you think about this?
I would say normally I answer that question, it's a yes, no. And it's no one shoe that fits all. These are conversations people have to have with their family physician, with their clinician. And sometimes I've worked some of my intake questionnaire. I need to have a family doctor's info on there so that I can have a release if we need to really talk about medication or reconciling things, that I'm able to have that free way of talking with your family doctor within the limits of your confidentiality. So I would say yes. For some people, they believe that medication has really made them dependent on them. You might be put on antidepressants, but as you take those medications, it can really affect your liver for long term if you depend on that. There's some types of medication that are also higher depending on somebody's chemical imbalances or ways of coping, that they might feel dependent on them, others may not. The other side to the question is that, yes, for some people, they've found actually medication worsening their condition, but the research is really varies. And I would say that there's no concrete truth to that. Medication should actually, too much of anything, we know that. Even alcohol is not too good for you, or when you don't take it right, or when you cross it with other things that are not lined up. So I would say it's a yes, no.
Okay, thank you so much, Noah. Nicole, question for you. I believe that everyone has a level of mental illness. We have to do some mental fitness to stay sane. What do you think, Nicole?
Yes, that was an absolute yes. And we all have to do it. It's how we are thinking, recognizing when we've gone through trauma, and trauma can be it's so varied, you know, from losing a child, not losing a child, from, you know, being rejected, and it's how we're dealing with it. And as Noah said, and Joshua said, we have to have these creative, brave spaces to have the conversations and to deal with our mental fitness. I would also say to people, you have a family physician. You need a coach, whether it's a life coach, whether it's a mental fitness coach like myself, whether it's a mentor, but and I say iron sharpens iron. You need somebody who sharpens you in your life, and that is on the same level and higher. The example I use is, you cannot have a knife in your knife block and not sharpen it. But when you go to sharpen it, you can't go and every time you use it on a cutting board, it gets dull. So it's not going to work. It requires the same metal. And a knife, a sword needs another thing just like it, and it gets sharpened. So you need to sharpen your mind. You need to read. You need to play music. You need to edify yourself. And for some of us, we read scripture. For some of us, we read affirmations. But, you know, the question, I go back to like Joshua and Noah talking about the church. And when people hear meditation, they demonize meditation. Meditate on the word, people. Meditate, take the word. If you feel it's demonic, take the word and turn it into a meditation. What I mean is, take the truth, make I am statements, not I am going to. Mm-hmm. Find the I am statements, translate it. Whether you listen to Deepak Chopra, whether you listen to, I don't care who you listen to. The fact is, get up in the morning and speak truth to yourself. Go to bed at night and speak truth to yourself. Not what you believe about the things that you're not doing right. Get gratitude. Be conscious and get someone to, because sometimes we don't know how to do gratitude to ourselves. And that's part of your faith. What do you believe about you? And maybe find that loved one. Nikki, can I have a real conversation with you? What do you really think of me? You know, and Nikki's going to tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. But make sure that when Nikki tells you the not so good, that you find solutions. How can I get better at this?
Yeah.
Don't focus on your weaknesses, focus on your strengths. And that's your faith. Your faith is broad. It's not just about a spiritual thing. It's about your belief system.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to ask the three panelists to answer this question. First with Joshua, what's the best way to find someone to talk to if you can't afford, say, a professional?
The best way to find somebody if you can't afford a professional, I think first and foremost, take an inventory of what's around you. There's a scripture that says, when you come to a certain place, when you're in a sense, just to summarize it, when you're ready, your teacher will show up, right? So when you get to a certain level, sometimes you would actually be surprised. I think it's just a perspective thing that what we're looking for is actually like around us. Like if you look in your phone book, if you look at your contacts, the very people that you need, like for example, me and Noah went to university together, and he's a psychotherapist. Just something like you don't know, like when you just actually sit down, you might actually realize, wait, my friend is brothers with somebody who's a doctor, right? So it's just like thinking about, I may not be able to afford, a specialist, but it's now bringing your creativity. What do I have in my hands, right? Like, God said to Moses, what's in your hands? Like, social media is not just for you to kind of just stun and look good, but think about your contacts. And I'll start there. You'll be surprised with how many people are actually out there. And then after that, if you still feel like you don't have anything there, then just go into your friends and just like try to talk to them and be real with them and just try to start there. And then the third thing is, go online, start searching it out. And, you'll find people like Noah who said like he has us 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes are free, or you'll even find services that are free. What I'm trying to say is like, once you put that effort in, you will be surprised how things will just kind of connect and show up, because I don't know how, people call it the universe and whatever you want to call it, but literally that whatever you put out, it's reciprocated, right? And I really believe it's just a divine orchestration, like as you get serious. But it goes back to what we were saying before, right? Sometimes when people need help, like they kind of like don't acknowledge it and they don't want to reach out. So the doors kind of close automatically. But once you make up your mind, you go through your phone, you try every single avenue, then I believe that solution will show up. For example, this might be somebody's solution today, right? Like you can reach out to me now. You can reach out to Nicole, man. I want to reach out to Nicole. I need some victory speaks in my life. I don't know about you, or I'll reach out to Noah. I'm like, wow, I went to university with this guy. Let me get a free 30 minutes. Because the truth is, like, we all need psychotherapy. We all need, like, it's just a process. And I hope I could even connect with them. Like, so what I'm saying is it's all around you. But if you focus on the darkness is what's going to show up. When I go to work, sometimes people's like, oh, I literally, I'm sorry if I'm taking long, but I'm going to end with this. I literally went into work one day, and then after one of our guys said, I hope you guys have a good shift, or I'm like, have a blessed shift, as we were switching over. And then the guy was like, he just started getting angry. He's like, yo, don't say that, man. Don't say that. Every time you say, yo, knock on wood. Every time you say that, we always have a bad shift. I'm like, whoa. So like you literally train your mind now. Like you actually believe when I say have a good shift, like, no, that's superstitious. Now I'm going to have a look at the mental state you're in. Of course, you're always going to have a bad shift, right? So it starts with, as our mental fitness coaches say, finding people that you may not have access or resources to starts in the mind. In Daniel, it says he purposed in his heart, which led to the mind. So first start with your mind. I'm going to find help because I need help, whether I can afford it or not. And then the path will unravel for you. Your steps will be ordered.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. We just have a couple of minutes left before we close. Noah, could you quickly tell us how we can find someone?
Yes. Thank you so much, Joshua. I definitely believe in the concept that we only overcome by confronting, like Joshua said. I mentioned of that in the book as well. But the mind is capable of really, I call it my best friend, and could be your worst enemy in times when you're not careful. So really start within your circles, as Joshua said, but also I like to draw these two lines for people to understand that I have the horizontal line, and that's me and you. That's the relation we have to keep in contact. We open our mouth to reach out to the horizontal. The vertical one, I call it me and my God or my diary. So sometimes I may be in the middle of the night. That could be my support. I just need to calm myself down, maybe tune into this one prayer line, and that might calm me down. But I really believe also in the three pieces I'm going to leave with you, which are pillars that I believe most of my clients have benefited from. Number one is self-awareness, really understanding where you are, what's really going on. We mentioned of the sleep or the mind when you wake up, check in. The body, how are you doing physiologically? Score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, like Nicole said. Spiritually, give yourself a number so that by midday or by the end of the day, you know how to counteract some of these needs. The second piece is self-care. So from the self-awareness, we know where we are, we know where we need to go. That's the self-care piece. You start really taking care of your needs and those around you. Healed people, the other line I'm giving you, healed people, heal others. I believe in that concept, having gone through my own traumas as a war child soldier to this point of really helping others. I believe in that. My brother who didn't do that, I lost him to addiction. I just wanted to mention that. Point number 3 is actually the most important one, and that's self-regulation. When we are able to be aware and take care of our needs, we are able to calm maybe the anxiety, maybe the breathing helped you yesterday. Prayer could be helpful today, but really start by those 3 pieces as you start really elaborating on your networks, on reaching out. The last piece, call me. I'm available, especially our people. I can't stress this enough. I'm really open, be it today, be it tomorrow, to receiving your phone call. Email me, our admin will get back to you, and then we'll figure out how to really sort things out. If you have a history of trauma, there's some free support through the City of Toronto, Criminal Injuries Board, all of these things we know, Nicole knows, but until you reach out, we can't figure out how to help you. With that, I'll leave it there.
The CAMH Family Resource Center has a list of resources and places you can go. In our community, there's CAFCAN, CAFCAN, call them. Bounce Back is a free program. You can call in and have a free helpline. So, and the Family Resource Center number is 416-535-8501. And just go to CAMH, put in CAMH Family Resource Center, and they will, you don't have to be a client. It will give you lots of resources for our community and outside of our community. But CAFCAN also gives free counseling. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole, for that. And I want to thank you, all of the panelists who've joined today. You've been wonderful. We thank you for your wealth of wisdom. We thank you for your honesty. Thank you for those who joined us today to watch and to share on the chat. We really do appreciate you. And I'd also like to thank Patricia and Moses Mawa for creating this beautiful and blessed platform for us to share something so important, the impact of COVID-19 and navigating mental challenges. So we will continue the talk. We need to keep talking, seeking the people we feel comfortable about this issue, and keep moving forward. I'd also like to remind you that on Friday, February 5th at 6 p.m., we'll have an expert panel share their insight on the topic of managing your business and finances during the disruptive times. Don't forget to register on eventbrite.ca through Facebook and on the Transformation Institute page or at transformationinstitute.ca. And if you have any additional questions or like to connect directly with the Transformation Institute team, you can either reach out directly using the contact information on the slide, or you can reach out via Instagram or Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Noah, thank you. Nicole, thank you. Joshua, thank you so much. God bless you. God bless everyone who is watching. And we have another video for you to close the evening. Thanks very much.
Join us for a webinar on managing your business and finances during disruptive times. Our panelists, Wole Odeyemi, development banker and business consultant. Debbie Makaria, entrepreneur and speaker. And Toyin Crandall, success and wealth coach and entrepreneur. Moderator, Rebecca Tandon, media personality. Tuesday, February the 5th at 6 p.m. Get your free tickets at eventbrite.ca or visit transformationinstitute.ca. This is part of the Community Resilience Program of the Transformation Institute for Leadership and Innovation.
Afro Global Television is a global super channel that transforms the destiny of people of African descent through programming that informs, empowers, entertains, and uplifts. The mission of Afro Global is to showcase the best of Africa and the diaspora. Watch Afro Global Television on Rogers Cable, Bell 5, TELUS, and Eastlink.
In 2008, we felt that it was important to start a program to reach out to young people in our community because there was a lot of violence and there was just so much going on that was not positive about Black youth or youth in sort of disadvantaged neighborhoods. So we started a crossover mentorship program to reach out to these young people, to bring people that look like them, to share their experiences with them, to let them know that, you know, they're not alone in whatever they're going through, that somebody else has probably gone through the same experience. And like Maya Angelou said, when you learn, teach. When you get, give. And that's what the program is all about.
If we don't catch them early, they could be falling into the wrong hands or into the tracks that we don't want them to be. They have to be contributing to the society, not the other way.
It's important to have a mentorship program like this in the community because a lot of the time people are focused on their own lives and a lot of the time it's very separate. This actually lets people come together and learn from each other.
Kids nowadays, I think they spend too much time on the devices. They don't talk enough. Everything is a machine. And the ability to communicate, I mean, we have to go out and work and deal with other people. So I think any interaction where they have to learn to deal with other people, going to school and doing activities that they enjoy doing, I think you're gonna have a lot of success, but it's also a great teaching tool.
See, I can't afford to sleep till 7 o'clock, and people think you do, but discipline is important.
This mentorship program is really very significant simply because it ensures that our young people, our youth, who are the future of this country, it's obvious, need to be able to participate. We have for them to open up the system more and make it equitable and for them to easier able to access that field of employment and education. What the Institute is doing along with the program is to ensure that students and young people can reach their potential.
It gives them career coaching where they can learn the difference between a job and the difference between a career, knowing that a career is something that's more long-term versus a job is something that you just may do to pay the bills, to get by. And also during that transition from being a youth to an adult, which is very key and it's an essential part of growing up. And also it provides them with mentors that can give them not only the guidance, but give them the tools they need to be successful in life.
Hi, my name is Baladi Ajamali, and I was part of the Rio 2016 4x1 team with Andre DeGrasse. We won a bronze medal last year, and I was also part of the crossover mentorship program in 2008. Being a part of that program has changed my life and made me a better person today. So I challenge you to come and join this program.